Welcome to the debate between the two candidates running for town moderator in Belmont's upcoming election, April 7th. I'm Joanna Tzouvelis, and I'll be moderating the debate between the two candidates who are Mike Crowley, incumbent, and Adam Dash. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much, Joanna.
Thank you for having us, Joanna, and thank you to the Media Center.
Yes, well, I must mention that this is a historic night tonight in Belmont. It is our last show here in the studio at 9 Lexington Street. So you two are making history tonight.
Well, thank you.
Glad to be here.
And we are looking forward to a very interesting discussion between the two of you. But before we get into the questions, and I'm hoping we'll have time for about 10 of them, I want to go over the ground rules with both of you. The first ground rule is that you have 2 minutes to each give an opening statement. And before we started, I told you that we're going to go in the order that you're on the ballot, which is alphabetical. So Mike will give the opening statement first, and then Adam. And then we'll get into the questions. And the time limit on the questions is 2 minutes. 2 minutes for each of you to answer the questions. We have a timekeeper. There will be a beep when your time is up. And if you are still talking, then I will have to tell you that your time is up. So just try to, pay attention to the time, because if we stay on time, we can get in more questions. And also, if you have a rebuttal, if one of you wants to rebut what the other says, please raise your hand. Yes, I know, it's like we're in school again. Raise your hand, and then you'll have 1 minute to rebut when I call on you. Okay, so then if there is time, if we decide at about 5 minutes left in the show, if we have time for one more question or closing statements, we can decide what we want to do at that point. And so then that'll be it. And then I wish you both the best of luck as you continue your campaigns. So why don't we start with the opening statement from Mike Crowley.
Hello, I'm Mike Crowley, and I'm running for re-election as town moderator because I believe that town meeting works when it reflects the entire community, when the process is fair, and when people know that their voices matter. Town meeting needs to be accessible, well-run, and focused on what matters, giving people an opportunity to speak their minds and vote. And that's democracy at its best. Accessibility is a key issue. 1 year before my election, annual town meeting was held fully in person. Some town meeting members had to drop out because it was just too restrictive. To me, that was a real wake-up call. When participation gets harder, Belmont loses important voices. We lose parents juggling family responsibilities, many seniors, people with disabilities, people who travel for work, and others who want to serve their community. Accessibility is not some kind of a side issue. Since being elected, I've worked to make hybrid town meeting the norm because broader participation leads to better outcomes. I also created the Moderators Advisory Committee that meets under open meeting law to improve transparency and feedback. It's a real step forward. I've appointed a diverse group of experienced, independent, thoughtful people to key committees. Diversity helps our community. It helps our town government better reflect the community that we are today. As moderator, when I preside over town meeting, my approach is pretty simple. Be fair, be prepared, listen carefully, and make sure that everyone has a chance to be heard and to vote. I also understand that good process and broad participation, they go hand in hand, and that's the kind of town meeting I believe in, the kind of leadership that I believe in, and that's why I'm asking for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Adam, you're up.
Thank you, Joanna. Hello, I'm Adam Dash. I'm candidate for town moderator. This journey began last spring. In that time, after each night of town meeting, a stream of town meeting members reached out and urged me to run for moderator because they were not happy with how town meeting was being run. They were enthusiastic about the skills and experience that I bring and how that could benefit town meeting. After seeking opinions from many town meeting members, I decided that rather than sit back and complain, I would run for moderator. I've been a town meeting member for 18 years. I've served 2 terms on the select board, where I introduced many reforms. Now I'm seeking to be moderator to help our legislative branch, that is, town meeting. I'm ready to hit the ground running. The moderator has three main job responsibilities, and these skills fall right into my wheelhouse. The first job of the moderator is meeting management. For 35 years professionally and in my 2 terms on the select board, I frequently run large, complex meetings, often on controversial topics. It's very difficult to make informed decisions as moderator without a deep knowledge of the subject matter on a tremendous breadth of topics. Second job of moderator is making legal rulings. Town meetings typically include a lot of questions about what is and isn't permissible, and these rulings are often made on the fly during debate. As a municipal law attorney, this is what I do. The third job of moderator is making committee appointments. In 6 years on the select board, I appointed like 500 some odd people to 60 some odd committees. I will ensure that town meetings continue to be hybrid, as I did on the select board in our post-COVID world where hybrid is the norm. We've held hybrid town meetings for a while now. That's not going to change. As moderator, I pledge to foster a legislative branch that runs smoothly, fairly, and represents all. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. All right, let the debate begin. We'll start with Adam answering the next question, since Mike, you went first for the candidate statements. So the first question is, the town moderator appoints members to a handful of key committees, including the warrant committee. What's your view of how the moderator should approach committee appointments, and what criteria will you use for appointments?
Thank you. I'd like to bring, I've done a lot of committee appointments for a very long period of time on the select board. I took a lot of interest in making sure those appointments were varied and diverse. I spent a lot of time finding people of different gender, nationality, area of town, economics, all these things, and we really made a lot of strides during my time on the select board in diversifying our committee appointments. I don't have a litmus test on putting people on committees. I'm an independent person. I don't take endorsements from advocacy groups. I talk to everybody all the time, whether I agree with them or not, to find people who fit into a committee. I think it's important to have a broad variety of skills. For instance, on the warrant committee, where I spent a decade, I know the warrant committee worked at its best when it had a diverse group of people, not just all financial modeling people. Now, you need the financial modeling people, don't get me wrong, but we had lawyers, planners, HR people, pension experts, people who could write the warrant committee report. All of those things were crucially important, and I found that the warrant committee worked best when it was like that. On the warrant committee also in particular, I majored in economics. I know that it's called the dismal science. The problem is when you have financial people and they're working the numbers, those numbers really impact human lives, and there need to be people in the room who remind them of that from time to time. I've been on the building committees for the high school and the library, the high school and the Underwood Pool. I was on the warrant committee for a decade. I was in the capital budget committee. So I know how these work, and I know what they need, and I have the knowledge, experience, and track record to make the appointments and get skillful people appointed to them.
Thank you. Mike, do you need me to repeat the question?
If you could, it would be helpful.
Okay. The town moderator appoints members to a handful of key committees, including the warrant committee. What's your view of how the moderator should approach committee appointments, and what criteria will you use for appointments?
So, having a key interest in the committee is important, and as well as some fundamental skills that are helpful to the committee. And I also treat diversity as very important, including where people live, what kind of lived experience they have. I'm very aware that we have a problem from time to time, it seems, having people that fully represent our ethnic diversity in our town committees, and so this is also something that I pay attention to, as well as gender. And I'd just like to mention the warrant committee and perhaps the building committee, the Permanent Building Advisory Committee, as cases in point. The warrant committee is a committee that I served on for 6 years, and during my time on that committee, there is certainly a breadth of knowledge and experience that is very helpful, and I would not besmirch any of our town volunteers. They're all wonderful, but we have been lacking some people with core fundamental data analytic and financial modeling skills. And so that was a key interest for me this year. And I appointed 3 people who had those skills. And frankly, I did an awful lot of work to find people with those kinds of skills in order to make that committee function better. The Permanent Building Advisory Committee, I've made one new appointment and 1 reappointment. It's another challenge to find people with key building committee experience, experience in the construction trades, experience that would be helpful to building committees.
Time's up.
All right.
Mike, what changes, if any, do you think need to be put in place to help make town meeting run efficiently?
So I think town meeting is running fairly efficiently. I do think that there has to be continued attention, and this has been a big priority of mine, to communication with town meeting members in advance. They have to understand what's coming before town meeting, when town meeting is, how they can participate. And I do everything I can to make sure that people are sort of read into the issues before they get there. Now, you can't control that entirely because there is a cohort of town meeting members that do show up without reading anything. And you know, they listen to what other people are saying and they make decisions based on that. That's fine. But I think town meeting is running fairly efficiently, and I'd like to see that continue.
Okay, Adam, what changes, if any, do you think need to be put in place to help make town meeting run efficiently?
Sure. Now, I think that it's important, it's up to the moderator, it's not up to the town meeting members. I think the moderator needs to set a base where the town meeting members can operate smoothly and efficiently and have proper legal rulings, correct legal rulings, and have some confidence in the way things go. I've been hearing this as was thinking about running or not running for moderator, and it was sort of anecdotal at that point, but I was glad that actually the moderator ran a survey, and actually the results sort of bore out what I'd been hearing from people, which I thought was interesting but comforting. That I saw that only 49% of town meeting members were reporting that the explanation of the voting and next steps were clear, but only 41% were reporting that the procedural rulings were clear, and that more than 1/3, that's 36%, believe the moderator does not or sometimes does not apply the same rules to everyone. So I think that is not acceptable, and I think that also is not a town meeting that's running smoothly. I think it shows a problem. Now, the results were only released today, I saw in response to a public records request, even though they came in December. They were discussed at some moderator advisory committee meetings, so I was aware of it, but the fact that the public couldn't see it until today, I think is troubling and is a problem with transparency. I think the results should have been sent to the town meeting members right away. That's what it was said on the email that went out with the survey itself. So I'm running because, I was asked to by town meeting members who saw issues with town meeting. I saw the issues with town meeting. Rather than complain, I decided to get up and do something because that's what I do. When I see a problem, I just want to help. I mean, I have a skill set that I think fits the job of moderator very well, and I'm just trying to help if the people and the voters are so inclined to elect me to this position, because the role of moderator is right in my wheelhouse. And even those who have disagreed with me over the years on positions are supporting my candidacy because they believe I'm fair, clear, and knowledgeable.
Any rebuttal? Okay.
Yes.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah. So I have talked to an awful lot of town meeting members, and I think I'm the only moderator in recent history who has bothered to try to get feedback from town meeting members through surveys, which I think is really important. But I'm not finding many town meeting members that are raising questions about how town meeting is going. And in fact, the survey results, which anybody can see on the town meeting website, I think also bear this out, that there is a majority of town meeting members who either have no special opinion about how things are going or they think it's going well. And so, There are a minority of town meeting members who have raised certain issues, and I take that feedback very seriously, and we use that to improve town meeting.
Okay. Adam, 1 minute.
I don't need a minute. I'd just say that if nearly 1/2 of town meeting members are having a problem, it's a problem.
Do you want to move on to the next
No,
question?
I'd like to respond.
Okay.
So I would just challenge you to back that up with facts, Adam. The survey does not show that half of town meeting members are having a problem. The survey showed that there were areas of needed improvement, and frankly, I think we saw some of that improvement during the most recent special town meeting. I've discussed the results over 2 meetings of the Moderators Advisory Committee, received lots of feedback about those results, and I factor those results into what I'm doing. And I would hope that, if you were elected, you also would be looking for this kind of feedback, doing surveys, talking to people.
Always have.
Okay, we ready to move on?
Sure.
Ready?
Oh, yes, sure.
Adam,
Yes.
what personality characteristics differentiate you from your opponent and your approach to the moderator's job?
Yeah, I think a lot of the difference is what we bring to the table in terms of experience and skill set. As I said earlier, I have the skill set for the 3 main jobs, making the legal rulings as an attorney who handles municipal law, running large hybrid meetings. I just did a very large controversial hybrid meeting in another community for work on a project. A lot of people, hybrid, very complicated. And after the meeting, we were breaking it all down. And one of the techs who was running the hybrid technology came over to me and said, I do the tech for a lot of these kinds of meetings, and you were the best person I've ever seen run one. And that was an unsolicited compliment, which made me feel good. But I think I have a certain ability to run these sorts of things. And I said, as we talked about earlier, making those committee appointments, I think that having a broad range of skills is really important to have. And I have the experience of appointing people. I used to take the resumes back when we used to get them on paper for doing committees, and I would make little piles all over the floor. My kids thought I was crazy, but people had their choices of 1 through 3, and we had all these committees, and some committees never had any women on them ever, for instance, and so I would put them and try to make them and make sure that they got what they wanted, but make sure the committees were all even, and I made the piles, and I bring them into the select board, and the select board, other members would go, looks good to me, because I took the time and did the work, and I think we really got a lot of people and built a really good bench of people who can take the town forward, because we're not in any of these offices forever. We're in the offices for a period of time, and then we hand it off to the next people, which is as it should be. So I've always been fair and transparent. I hear people out, and that's been, I think, a skill that I brought from the select board. People have told me that, come up and told me that over the years, that they feel very comfortable talking to me. I have a good sense, I guess, of the room. I can read the room well. I've been doing this, like I said, for 35 years as a lawyer, running meetings in person, all on Zoom, and then now hybrid. A lot of the time, I've probably done 100 and something a year because I do so many things in my job that way, in addition to the 2 years that I was chair of the
Time's
select
up.
board.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Mike, what personality characteristics differentiate you from your opponent and your approach to the moderator's job?
So I don't start with a presumption that I know all the answers. I am inherently interested in knowing what other people think, and I solicit feedback all the time. But I do bring a core set of strengths to the job that I do, and that comes from a long professional life working in public policy, working with lawyers, working with law, and frankly, since moving to Belmont, working with the issues that town government deals with. Through my experience as a town meeting member, as a member of the warrant committee, as a member of the school committee, as someone who has watched more select board meetings than I want to count on, than I can count on any hands. And frankly, as a year into the job of moderator, it's nothing quite prepares you for the job of moderator. Even if you've sat on the other side of the table as a select board member working on planning for town meetings, it's not the same as doing the job. And frankly, there is some learning experience that comes for anyone. It's not just a large meeting. It's really not a large meeting. It's got its own set of procedures, its own body of law, its own, and there are multiple things to be paying attention to. And you have to be monitoring the room constantly, which I do, and it's working.
All right. Next question. Mike, when town meeting debates become tense or polarized, what specific strategies would you use as moderator to maintain order while still allowing open discussion?
So I haven't found a tremendous need to call people out for outrageous behavior. We're not seeing that in my town meetings, in our town meetings this past year. There certainly are strong felt opinions, but one of the things that has so impressed me by town meeting members is that they have the ability to keep their cool, to speak calmly, civilly, and I think part of the attitude that I bring to town meeting helps in that regard because I respect every single one of them, and I'm not making faces when they're talking because I like one person more than somebody else. Everybody deserves to be heard, and I make sure that they're heard.
Adam, do you need me to repeat it?
No, I got it.
Okay.
I think there has been a lot of tension at town meeting. I think as recently as the March 4th meeting that we had last week regarding the overlay, I think tempers were running high. I think there were a lot of people shouting points of order and unfortunately arguing with each other out in the town meeting chairs. I think what's important, and this is what I would ensure, is to make sure that that is all sorted out and it doesn't get there. I've had a good track record of that on the select board where we've taken on extremely difficult votes and extremely difficult issues. I think making clear rulings and the people know they're being heard tends to keep people respectful. As I said, I've run very large hybrid meetings at the select board and in my job, and all people were heard and it was all civil. You need to read the room, keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on, be flexible, listen to the views. People's properties and livelihood are at stake on some of these items town meeting takes up. I understand the high tension. It's important that people, that you recognize that, and I understand that people have grave concerns about things from time, but you need to bring people into the process and treat them right. We're all adults at town meeting, and if decisions by the moderator are fair, legally correct, and clear, people will understand. Belmont's full of smart people. If given the respect and the information they need, they'll make the right decisions. Again, these kinds of skills are right what I do, and this is why people asked me to run. I think experience matters, and that's why I want to step up to help.
Any rebuttals?
Yeah, experience does matter, and having been in this job for a full year meant that when we met on March 4th and March 5th for our special town meeting on the zoning overlays for Belmont Center and the adjacent area, we were dealing with very difficult issues, and yet the meetings went well. I keep hearing Adam talking about fair legal rulings. I don't know what you're talking. So I really don't know what you're talking about because frankly, I have not made any incorrect rulings. I certainly did not in our recent special town meeting. As you know, the moderator has a great deal of discretion while applying the rules, but I do apply the rules fairly, and everybody had an opportunity to be heard.
Adam, any?
Yeah, I would say that the moderator survey does not bear that out, and I would also say that, and I don't want to get into examples. I mean, I could, and I don't want to sit here and negatively campaign. I mean, look, I think when we were voting on whether to terminate debate, and you said we were voting to indefinitely postpone, and then everyone in the audience started saying, no, we're voting on terminate debate. That's a problem.
Can I respond to that? So every one of us is human, and occasionally, and frankly, I've noticed this just doing campaign videos, occasionally something comes out of my mouth that is not what I think I'm saying. It happens rarely, but it happens to everybody. And so when you say that I left everybody confused, we quickly self-corrected and nobody was confused about what they were voting on. That town meeting went well. Everybody had an opportunity to be heard. There was lots of pressure to be doing things differently than everybody gets the same chance to be heard, but everybody had the same chance to be heard and to take a vote, and it worked. That is the core of town meeting. Sometimes it gets a little messy, but that's just the nature of democracy. That's the nature of having people making decisions. Nobody is perfect.
Okay. Adam, one last
Town
rebuttal?
meeting shouldn't be correcting the moderator.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Adam, are you committed to hybrid town meeting, and do you support making it a permanent option for Belmont?
Sure. I mean, as I said in my opening statement, yeah. I mean, of course, I think we'll keep town meeting hybrid. It could be better, though, and it should be better. I think one of the problems is there's sort of two town meetings. There are the people who are in the room have a different experience than the people who are watching on Zoom, and I think that needs to be fixed. I think it's one legislative body, and when people, I did an experiment where I actually took a session of town meeting on Zoom just to see what the experience was like, and I realized you can't hear what people are saying in the audience. You can only hear what's being said into the microphones. So when people stand up in their chair and say point of order, or they're talking back and forth or whatever, or the town meeting is correcting the moderator, say you don't hear that on the Zoom, so that you're really not getting that full experience. Miking the room, having cameras or something where you could see who's in line in the room when you're on Zoom, and so that you can see who's online on Zoom when you're in the room. So that way everybody would have the same experience. I think that would be fantastic, because it is important that people be able to attend. I mean, we had select board hybrid meetings before town meeting even went hybrid. It's not like this is novel or new or anything. Other towns do it all the time. I participate in them. Sometimes I show up in person if I can, sometimes I can't. And I do it on Zoom. It's fantastic. It's not going away. And I do these all the time. And I don't think there's any reason to be doing things like filing a citizen's petition to make sure town meeting doesn't go away. It's not going away. And I think it's inappropriate for the moderator to file a citizen's petition anyway, even if it's to support sunshine or rainbows, because I don't think anything should go in front of town meeting where the moderator is putting forward something that then the body of the moderator presides over, makes the decision. Whether the moderator recuses himself or not, there's going to be this implied pressure to vote for it or fear some reprisals. Not that any will happen necessarily, but people might feel that way, and I think that's inappropriate. I wouldn't do that.
Mike, are you going to answer the question?
Some of what Adam,
Are you answering the question, or are you rebutting what he said? The question is, are you committed to hybrid?
Can I rebut?
Okay.
Some of what you're saying, Adam, doesn't make any sense. We are working with auditoriums. First of all, the high school auditorium, the technical specs of that auditorium, the audio and visual connections that were available to us weren't fully understood, and a great deal of work had to go into finding someone, the contractor who installed the equipment, to help figure out how to do town meeting as technically well as possible. And unfortunately, it wasn't possible to have all the mics that we needed, and it got worse at the Chenery. There just is no possibility of placing enough mics in the auditoriums.
Okay. Should we move on to the next question?
Sure.
I mean, you didn't really get to answer it.
Well, if he answered the question, it's how I wanted to use his time.
Basically,
No,
the question is, if you want to.
Well,
So just if you could repeat the question and.
Well, it was, are you committed to hybrid town meeting, and do you support making it a permanent
So
option?
there's an important thing to say about that. I am so deeply committed to hybrid town meeting because it's something that we've been fussing about for the past 3 years. Yes, we tried it following COVID. Was there lukewarm support for it? Was there no support for it? Yes, you saw all these things right until the last annual town meeting before I was elected. And frankly, we just need to settle things. We're operating off of temporary state authorizations. I have lobbied, and this is the business of the moderator and the responsibility of the moderator. I have lobbied our state senator, our state representative about making this permanent, and frankly, it's not happening. And so, is it reasonable for a moderator who has to be concerned about the health of town meeting to file a citizen's petition in order to make hybrid town meeting a permanent option for Belmont? Yes. The moderator has a very limited advocacy role, but ensuring the health of town meeting, ensuring the availability of hybrid town meeting is absolutely part of the job.
I'll allow one rebuttal.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I don't care what the subject matter of a citizen's petition is. It's inappropriate to me for a moderator to put forward anything or take a position on anything. Secondly, on the select board, when we first were in COVID, and they said you could do meetings remotely, and they would do it for a limited period of time. And when the time was starting to run out, we got really nervous. We're like, oh no, what's going to happen? We're going to have to go in person, and it's still COVID and all that. And then, of course, they extended it. And we're like, oh, okay. And then that happened again. Oh no, they're not going to extend it. We're going to have to go in person. And then they extended it, and that became like, well, this is just the thing that they do. Why they won't make it permanent, like just pass a law, I don't know. But it's this every year thing. It's not going away, the right to do it. Otherwise, every city and town in the state would be filing some sort of home rule petition to make it permanent, and they're not, because everyone understands this is just how it rolls.
All right.
Quick response.
We've had
All
the same
right,
question
very
for a
quick,
while now.
because I think we
Yes,
should move on.
Some other communities, and frankly, this is the model for what I've done with the citizens petition. Some other communities have asked for permission to do permanent, remote, and hybrid town meetings as an option. And that is my guide. I think that should be our guide. The legislature isn't moving forward with a permanent option because there are too many communities that like their in-person meetings. And so if we can't satisfy the entire state, maybe we can satisfy Belmont.
All right, let's move on. Mike, you formed an advisory committee to help you find and appoint candidates to committees. Do you support keeping the Moderator's Advisory Committee in place? And if so, how would you focus their time?
Yeah, so I absolutely would keep the Moderator's Advisory Committee in place. And I think it needs to be made permanent. So I plan to work, if reelected, I plan to work with the Select Board on a modification to the bylaws to make this committee permanent. We've gone through years and years and years of zero transparency in terms of really critical decision-making on the part of the moderator. And this includes committees, committee appointments, and much of what happens at town meeting. And frankly, the Moderator's Advisory Committee is a way to bring some of that decision-making out into the open. Now, I haven't received a great deal of help from the Moderator's Advisory Committee in terms of finding people to appoint to committees. That's something that I deeply would like their help with in the future, because this is not a part-time job. I spend hours recruiting candidates for committees, and I could use some help.
Okay.
It's my turn now.
Okay, it is
Yeah.
your turn.
Yeah, I would keep the Moderator Advisory Committee. It's a good concept, but there's a lot of room for growth with it. The issue, I think, is when you ask people to volunteer is not wasting their time and giving them things to do that are substantive. And if one asks an opinion of them, to actually listen and take it to heart. Because I've served on advisory committees in the past, back early on, and we did the work, and we provided our report, and then it just got shelved and nothing happened to it, and it was infuriating. I would never do that to somebody. I think the Moderator Advisory Committee, I've spoken to a lot of the members. I asked them, like, what's your term and when does it end? They didn't know. Like, what's the scope of it? They didn't know. What was your appointment process? Every precinct seemed like they did it a little differently. You can't have this kind of loosey-goosey, quasi committee like this. I think when we created committees on the select board, and I created the Economic Development Committee, I created the Transportation Advisory Committee, the Structural Impact Group. Although we did those committees, we drafted a charge for them, which had the scope of their work. We had what their terms were. We staggered them. We had how they were chosen. And I also wrote the rules for the select board on how committee appointments are done, because there was nothing in writing, and it was kind of all over the place. So I think if we tighten all of that up and give them action items with clear deadlines on the Moderator Advisory Committee, I think it could be a robust and volunteer experience. And I would be actually transparent with it. I think the fact that the videos have not been posted online until public records requests went in, I think you'd have to watch them live to know what was going on like I did, but I don't think that's okay. I would say you don't ask people to volunteer without a plan. Just like you wouldn't ask someone out on a date and then not have anything set up at all or planned whatsoever. So I think it would be a good group to activate, and I think they're very talented people who could really be released to do some good work, but that's not what's been happening.
Rebuttal, Mike?
Yeah, so I'm glad that Adam actually appreciates the Moderator's Advisory Committee, and I'm sorry, Adam, that you missed the fact that there is indeed a charter. There is indeed something that was circulated to all town meeting members that described the purpose of this committee and how I envisioned it would function. Now, you talk about wasting people's time, and I don't know what time you think has been wasted on the Moderator's Advisory Committee, even when people disagree. And people on that committee disagree with each other. They disagree with me from time to time. Even when they disagree, I do very intently listen to everything that they say. It becomes important feedback, and I would do nothing to disband that committee. It's important. We need to continue it, and there are certainly more things that the committee could be doing.
Yeah, I mean,
One more rebuttal.
I hate to give examples of things, but I mean, it's sort of like when the Moderator Advisory Committee was asked to interview warrant committee candidates. I think it was back in September, and then the moderator came in after the interviews and said, "I'm appointing these people." And then one of the members said, "Aren't you even going to ask us our opinion? You had us go and interview all of these people." And then one of the members of the committee quit. I think that's a problem. This is what I'm talking about. Again, I hate having to bring up examples. You basically asked me to, so I'm going to have to, but I wouldn't have normally. But it's just, this can be put right, and I'd like to be elected so I could do that.
Can I respond to this, Joanna? I mean,
I really think
just very quick.
One final rebuttal.
Yeah. So, Adam, you are mistaken about what happened at that meeting. I did very definitely ask for the opinions and the feedback from that committee before I appointed anyone, before I made any decisions. Yeah, there's just no doubt about that. Go back and look at the minutes.
Wow. I did. I watched the video. I asked people to go watch the video, but the videos haven't been released until there was a public records request. But it was I don't want to get into this back and forth. Look, it's all on the video. You can see what's going on.
I think we should move on, because we still only have about 20 minutes left. So, Adam.
Yep.
How would you approach transparency and moderator decision making?
Yeah, I mean, we've touched upon a lot of that. I mean, as far as what we've talked about so far, I mean, as far as transparency, like I said, I think it's important to make sure that videos are released of meetings. I think it's important to talk to everybody and make sure that the rules are clear up front. I think for town meeting, it's important to explain the legal rulings and why they're being made. It's important to make sure that everybody understands what's being voted on before the voting starts to scroll. I think it's all extremely important to make sure that town meeting members are together as one body. They don't have to all agree, of course, but it's important that everybody, everything be put out there. It's important that the Moderator Advisory Committee videos be out, that survey results be out, that people get a chance to equally speak at town meeting regarding the issues, because I think my whole guiding light is that the town meeting members, I want to make sure they have all the information that they need and want to make a wise decision. And I think when you give a bunch of smart people in Belmont all of the information on both sides, I think that they would do a good job. And I think that I did that on the select board. Sometimes I would come into a meeting thinking something would go one way, and I heard from somebody who said something unexpected, and I was like, huh, I hadn't really thought of it like that. So, I mean, that's what we do in court as well. You know, you can't really get to the truth of the matter until you have everybody out there and talking to each other. And I talk to everybody. I think that's also part of transparency, is going out there and talking to people, being at community events, whether it's Belmont Youth Hockey, whether it's the Belmont Muslim Friends Ramadan ceremony, whether it's a veterans event, whether it's a Belmont Against Racism event. Holding office hours is important for transparency, which I did regularly as a member of the select board. I'd table out at the farmer's market and people would come by and talk, or at the library or town hall. Being out and about in the community, I think, is important.
Mike,
I'm sorry, what was the question?
how would you approach transparency and moderator decision making?
Yeah, so honestly, I think much of what Adam just said was not responsive to the question. I'll just throw that out right up front. There is no natural way, the way that the moderator role is conceived by tradition and by law and state law for there to be anything like open meeting law operating. So transparency is something that if the moderator's not interested in it, it's not going to happen. I am very interested in it, and one of the reasons for creating a moderator's advisory committee is so that we could actually have some transparency around moderators' decision making. And within town meeting itself, Adam has mentioned legal rulings and scrolling votes and things like this. And you talk about them as though there's something that's not happening. And frankly,
Absolutely.
Frankly, Adam, I think you're living in a little bit of an alternate reality, because if I make a legal ruling at town meeting, I do explain it. And I think you know that. Now scrolling the votes, I will say we had a slight mishap on one vote at our last special town meeting because we have had a change in town personnel. We had someone different operating the slides than we've had for the previous town meetings, and they went ahead and skipped ahead without scrolling the votes. It was impossible to scroll the votes at that point. Someone raised a point of order. After some quick discussion with town council and the town moderator,
Time is up, sorry.
we revoted.
It all falls on the moderator. The buck stops there.
Are we ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay, so Mike, you're up next. What do you think can be done to encourage more people to run for town meetings so available seats can be filled?
So I've been working on this issue for 3 years, ever since I started running for this job, and I've knocked on thousands of doors in Belmont and talked with an awful lot of people. I have been encouraging people to run for town meeting. People have multiple time commitments, and obviously it's difficult to attract enough people to fill all the seats that are on the ballot. But I do take this role very seriously. I've worked with the town clerk to make sure that there was a flyer in the town census that requested that people think about running for town office, including town meeting member. I worked with BAR and Belmont Pan-Asian Coalition to develop a flyer encouraging people to run for town meeting. That was distributed at the library opening. It was distributed at the MLK breakfast. I go to many of these events, and I talk to people at these events and encourage people to run for town meeting. I encourage an awful lot of people to run for town meeting. My next door neighbor, we don't agree. He and I don't agree on a lot of issues, but I encouraged him to run for town meeting, and he did file. We need to have all viewpoints represented in town meeting, and we're working on it.
Okay, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to make town meeting a place where people want to be. I've spent a lot of time, as I've talked about earlier, when I was on the select board, getting people to apply for committees, so we had a large pool from which to choose. For instance, there was somebody who came to a select board meeting and spoke really eloquently about a subject matter that was directly something we could have used on a committee where we had a vacancy. And I went up to that person afterwards and said, oh, you really need to apply for such and such a committee. And they said, oh, I don't know. And I said, oh, really, I'm asking you as a select board member, the town needs you. You've got a set of skills. You don't have to do it for the rest of your life. Can you please donate to your town, to the town and to all of us some of your talents? And they agreed to do it for a little while, and they're still there. I think that you really need to make the personal connection. The fact that we only have 3 precincts with full slates of town meeting member candidates this year instead out of 8 is not good. I would say that whatever recruiting efforts are being done are clearly not working. So I would redouble efforts. I think and also part of it is not just going out and talking to people, which I have been doing, but also making town meeting a body where people feel like they can make a difference, a place where they feel empowered, a place where they feel that it's efficiently run and their time is being well spent, and a place where they feel that they want to be a part of it.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next question?
Sure.
Okay, I think Adam, you're up next.
Okay.
Why is it important for residents to learn about the moderator candidates and get out to vote?
It's important for everybody to learn about every candidate for every office, town meeting member, moderator, and whatever the case may be. The other races may not be contested this year, but that isn't always the case. The moderator, as I said, runs the legislative branch, or manages the legislative branch, if you will, and that's important. The legislative branch needs to be a strong, co-equal branch of government to the executive branch, which is the select board. When I was on the select board, I instituted reforms. I wrote the rules that made the chairmanship of the select board rotate amongst select board members, so everybody got a turn, which was not the case before. I wrote the committee appointment rules. I wrote liquor license rules to make those fair. These are all things that I've done to make it so that people felt better and that the government ran better on the executive branch side. I'd like to now go and fix this on the legislative branch side, which is town meeting. And I think people should care how the legislative branch runs. It's an important part of town government. I would encourage everybody who is interested for running for office to please do it. I can tell you it's a fun experience to run for office in this town. You meet a lot of very interesting people. We're a town full of really, really good, cohesive folks, and even though we fight all the time, we are still, friends and neighbors. So I would hope that you would all be encouraged, and I guess I would say it to you now if you're watching. Please run for town meeting. Please run for any of the other elected offices town-wide. We, moderator in particular, is one right now, but any other office, because that's how this town runs. It runs on volunteers. I used to give talks to the schools and to the Girl Scouts with Ellen O'Brien Cushman, the clerk, and about how civics and how the government runs. And I had this talk, which was Belmont, where everyone's in charge and where no one's in charge, because that's the broken out type of government that we have.
Mike.
If you could repeat the question.
Sure. Why is it important for residents to learn about the moderator candidates and get out to vote?
People need to understand that town meeting is the body that approves any changes to bylaws, zoning bylaws, the budget, and these things all directly affect them in one way or another. And so they need to understand what town meeting is, how important it is, and the importance of having someone competent and with integrity, and somebody who's invested in fairness and ensuring that everyone has a right to speak at town meeting, and is in the position of moderator. And it's an important position, and people need to understand it. It's also a position that makes so many critical committee appointments, and we need for people to understand what these committees do, how they can participate, whether it be in town meeting or in these committees. And I know that I'm often talking to people in community gatherings, one-on-one, about these things, and it's important.
All right, are we ready for the next question? Mike, you're answering this one. As the demographics of our residents changes, what is your long-term vision for town meeting?
So I think that the town meeting needs to reflect the demographics of the entire town. One of the things that was very clear to me when I first ran for town meeting 10, 11 years ago was that, first of all, my wife and son are Asian American, and we have a large Asian American community in our town, and those people are important, just like everyone else, and yet so few of them participate in town meeting. We also, Roger Colton, probably about 13, maybe 15 years ago, did a study, a demographic study of town meeting, looking at who's in town meeting, and by and large it was middle-aged white homeowners. Belmont is far more diverse than that, and of course we have seen town meeting changing over time, but there are things that we need to do to help bring in more of the incredible diversity that we have in this town. And with respect to seniors, who are an important part of our town, parents and families, they're an important part of our town, and people who have difficulty always being there for an in-person town meeting. We have to do everything that we can to ensure that town meeting is accessible for them, and hybrid town meeting increases the possibilities that we'll see more participation from these folks going forward.
Okay. Adam.
Thank you. Over my 18 years on town meeting, we've seen a lot of change in town meetings' makeup, for sure. We need to ensure that town meeting remains for all, and I did this in my time on the select board and appointing people on committees and making sure that the committees were for all, and we were very successful with that. One of my colleagues even mentioned at one point, how come we're getting all of these people applying when before we couldn't get anyone to apply? It's because I was out there asking people to apply. Town meeting has to run well, and when town meeting runs well, I think it's easier for newer people who aren't involved in things to feel like they can be involved. I think if the moderator makes it seamless, I think if the moderator is very clear and concise on things, I think if new town meeting members are paired with existing town meeting members, if there is not just a seminar at the beginning on how procedure works, but a seminar like there used to be where the chair of the warrant committee would walk new town meeting members through the budget. I think that's important. When I was on the warrant committee in my decade on there, I was chairing one of the subcommittees. I wrote a guide for my subcommittee members who were new on how to review the budget and analyze it, because I was explaining it over and over again. It seemed like I should just write it down. So I did that, and then other subcommittee chairs were like, oh, could you give me that? Because I'd like to give it to mine. And then the whole warrant committee ended up sharing it. And I wrote that just because I think it is important that people be trained up and know. And I think if you make it so that people of all types feel comfortable coming and welcome coming and understand what's going on, and it's all made fairly understandable, because sometimes it can seem a little bit opaque to outside people, some of the formalities, but it's certainly well doable, and I would love to do that as moderator.
Are we ready to move on, or you have a rebuttal?
I just want to say that, Adam, you talked about writing some rules or something for the warrant committee, and one of the things that struck me about the warrant committee, and I know that we overlapped in part on the warrant committee, was the extent to which there's just continued group grope over what is the role of the warrant committee, what are we supposed to be deciding, what are we supposed to be working on here, and this is something that really concerns me, and so we belong to an organization called the Massachusetts Association of Town Finance Committees, and they prepare a wonderful handbook, and we finally got that handbook distributed to to the warrant committee this year, so that there's a basis now for people to understand what they should be doing.
Okay, time's up. We have time for one more question, and I'm going to give you each 1 minute to answer it. So we're going to change the time to 1 minute. And we are starting with Adam. If elected, what would your top 3 priorities be?
Improving how town meeting itself runs would be number 1. It has to run well so the town meeting members can focus on the important things. Make sure the committee appointments are varied, both, as we talked about earlier, type of people, but also skill set, rather than just one type of person, and listening to people. And thirdly, I want to be a moderator who's independent, trusted, who's not political, who's impartial, who's transparent and fair, because that's really important to me. I think it's important to a lot of people. I think moderators are a unique role, and it happens to fit my skill set for the reasons we've earlier discussed. And I think the moderator has a unique opportunity to model civic values, which is why I was talking about bringing a model town meeting to the schools so the kids could be town meeting members debating a mock article and learn how local democracy works. But I think it's important to make sure town meeting members have the information they need to make the hard decisions they have to make.
Okay, Mike.
So, there's always room for improvement, and I am certainly looking as moderator to improve town meeting over time. Just as we've done this year, I'm looking to do more of that. Recruiting for committees, it's a full-time job. There's not enough expression of interest in our committees, and sometimes you have to do a lot of work to find people that are diverse, have different viewpoints, that have skill sets that match the work of the committee, something I'm committed to doing. I'm as deeply committed to neutrality, fairness, impartiality as a moderator as anyone could possibly be. I don't think it could be done better, but I'm sure that there are others who think they could.
Now, I'm going to allow you each 30 seconds to make your closing statements. Sorry, I have to cut you both short. And we're going to start with Mike.
All right. So what this election comes down to is what kind of a moderator, what kind of a town meeting, and ultimately, what kind of a town do we want to have? The town meeting needs to be fair, accessible, and open to the full community. It should be a place where people feel heard, where process is respected, and where participation is encouraged. And we have all those things. And one thing that's important to note is that you don't have to be a lawyer to do this well. And I humbly ask for your vote for my reelection.
Thank you, Mike. Adam,
Thank you,
30
Joanna.
seconds.
I pledge to provide space at town meeting where all views are aired, where all rulings are unbiased and legally correct, and where all town meeting members are clear on what is being discussed and voted on. I pledge to be open, unbiased, and transparent. The position of moderator is not political, and I will not take positions on articles. As we go forward, I am excited about the possibilities for our legislative branch. Belmont deserves a town meeting which is a robust, co-equal branch of government, and it requires a moderator with the skills and experience to help town meeting be at its best. I ask for your vote on April 7th.
Thank you both for a very robust debate this evening. I wish you continued luck with your campaigns, and I hope everyone watching at home will get out and vote on April 7th. I hope you will watch Belmont Media's campaign programming, which begins airing this weekend. We have candidate spots, we have speak outs, and we have this debate. And come visit us in the new Belmont Public Library studio once it opens. Wish you all a wonderful spring. May we have no more snow.
Amen.